In the beginning, there was only the Nile, a mighty river winding its way through a vast desert. Without the Nile, there would be no Egypt, no civilization, no history, just endless sands stretching forever under a burning sun. Thousands of years ago, small groups of people began to settle along the banks of the river. They were hunters and gatherers, following the rhythms of the seasons. They discovered that the Nile flooded every year, bringing rich black soil perfect for farming. It was a miracle, a gift from the gods. These early settlers built simple huts of reeds and mud. They grew wheat, barley, and flax. They fished in the river and hunted birds and wild animals. They learned to weave baskets and make pottery. They lived in small villages governed by local chieftains. Life was simple but not easy. Survival depended on cooperation and hard work. Over time, these small communities grew larger and more complex. Trade developed between villages, ideas and goods flowed along the Nile villages, united into small kingdoms, each ruled by a king called a chieftain. The most powerful of these kingdoms were in the north, called Lower Egypt, and in the south, called Upper Egypt. The people of Upper Egypt wore white crowns, while the rulers of Lower Egypt wore red crowns. These symbols of power would later become iconic when the two lands were finally united. Around 3100 BCE, a powerful leader known as Nama, sometimes called Menes, emerged from Upper Egypt. He was a warrior and a visionary determined to bring the two lands together. Legend says that Nama led a mighty army down the Nile, conquering Lower Egypt and marrying a princess from the north to seal his victory. Around 3100 BCE, a powerful leader known as Nama, sometimes called Menes, emerged from Upper Egypt. He was a warrior and a visionary determined to bring the two lands together. Legend says that Nama led a mighty army down the Nile, conquering Lower Egypt and marrying a princess from the north to seal his victory. With unification came new challenges. Egypt needed a central government to organize agriculture, manage resources, and defend the land. Powerful officials called viziers were appointed to help the king oversee the kingdom. Taxes were collected, armies were raised, temples were built in honor of the gods. Religion played a crucial role in early Egyptian society. The people believed that the king was not just a ruler, but a divine being chosen by the gods to maintain Ma'at, the cosmic order of balance and harmony. Without Ma'at, chaos would consume the world. The Egyptians developed one of the earliest writing systems called hieroglyphics, using pictures to represent words and sounds. They carved these symbols into stone and wrote them on papyrus scrolls, allowing them to keep records and pass down knowledge from generation to generation. The ancient Egyptians were the OGs of art and architecture. Early tombs were called mastabas, simple flat-roofed structures built over the dead. But they would soon evolve into the magnificent pyramids that we still have today, silently watching over us from their lofty perches. As farming techniques improved, so did the Egyptian population. There was even a surplus of food, which meant that not everyone had to farm. They could specialize in other crafts, like pottery, weaving, metalworking, and stone carving. Villagers could now trade their goods and services for food, making them wealthier than their neighbors. Some villages even became towns, and some towns even became cities. And these cities became centers of culture and power, all because the Egyptians had mastered the art of farming. The Nile continued to be the lifeblood of Egypt. Every year, the inundation brought renewal and prosperity. The Egyptians built canals and irrigation systems to control the floodwaters. Turning the desert into a fertile paradise, society became more stratified. The king stood at the top, followed by nobles, priests, scribes, artisans, and farmers. Slavery was rare at this early stage, but prisoners of war were sometimes forced into labor. Despite the challenges of life in ancient times, the people of early Egypt built a civilization that would inspire the world for millennia. Their achievements in art, science, architecture, and governance laid the foundations for all that was to come. The story of Egypt had begun, a story of gods and kings, of wars and wonders, of life and death, and the eternal quest for immortality. In the next chapter, we will journey into the time of the early dynastic period, when the first kings built the foundations of a timeless empire. Stay with us as we continue our exploration of the greatest civilization in history. The earliest Egyptians believed that nature itself was alive with divine power. The river, the sun, the sky, the earth, all were sacred forces. They worshipped gods like Hapi, the spirit of the Nile, and Khnum, the ram-headed god who shaped humans on his potter's wheel from clay. Each village had its own local gods and spirits, and shrines were built to honor them with food offerings and prayers. These deities were not distant or abstract. They were part of daily life. They protected the crops, brought rain, and judged the dead. The idea that the afterlife was a continuation of this life gave the Egyptians a strong sense of purpose and duty. Even in these early times, the Egyptians showed a deep understanding of nature. They observed the stars to create a calendar. They knew the phases of the moon and how to predict floods. They measured land using ropes and simple tools. This knowledge would later evolve into astronomy, geometry, and engineering. Their medicine was advanced for its time, using herb surgery and spells to treat illness. The earliest doctors were priests who saw no difference between science and magic. Everything was connected through Ma'at, the balance of life. The unification of Egypt was not just a political moment, it was a spiritual event. Two lands, two peoples, two ways of life, now woven into one sacred thread. This union allowed for the birth of a national identity, one language, one writing system, one set of gods, and above all, one king, the Pharaoh, the living Horus, the bridge between the world of men and the realm of gods. This idea that the Pharaoh is divine would dominate Egypt for thousands of years. And so from the banks of a river in the desert rose a civilization of wonder, its roots deep in the mud of the Nile, its spirit soaring with the stars. The Egyptians were not just farmers or builders, they were dreamers, visionaries, people who believed they could live forever, and who built monuments to challenge time itself. The pyramids, the temples, the writings, they all began here. In the shadow of the first Pharaoh, on the sacred land, brought to life by the Nile. This is the dawn of Egypt, and the story has only just begun.